Welcome everybody to the Headhunter Hideout. Great to see everybody. If you are out there and you're live with us, feel free to let us know who you are, where you're coming in from, and if you've got questions today on this episode, definitely ask them, and we will get to the questions. But I am excited. I have Marc Hutto with us, who is the CEO, and that is Chief Encouragement Officer. So we'll get to that. Of Reveal Global Intelligence. So super excited to have you with us, Marc. I would love for you to just give the audience a quick introduction of yourself, and then we'll just find out how you got into recruitment. But why don't you just give a quick introduction, and we'll get into today's conversation.
Thanks, Joel. Marc Hutto, CEO, founder of Reveal Global Intelligence. 15 years ago, we're kind of in our 16th year now. We started out as a recruitment research firm back in the day before, there was less than 100 million people on LinkedIn, and finding talent was the harder thing to do. Now reaching people and making contact with them is now what we're hired to do more often. We're not a contingency firm. We're not retained. We're not RPO. We usually bill hourly for full search or on a project basis. Before Reveal, I was 15 years in what is now Wells Fargo, a little bit of time mixed in there with Deloitte, but all of it in recruiting as a recruiter, and then leading recruiting and sourcing teams, and then scratching that entrepreneurial itch.
Yeah, I love it. Did you, I guess before you started your own company, did you always kind of envision yourself doing that, or was that something that kind of developed throughout your career?
Very much developed out throughout the career, because I enjoyed it. I don't regret a day in my corporate life. I learned a heck of a lot. I had a lot of great colleagues, even better leaders. I was very fortunate in that respect. But in my family, I was the only one who was not an entrepreneur, and I was, I just wanted to do that. I'm not a very structured guy, so policies and rules and corporate stuff really, I was always kind of struggling with that. And in a small company, you can do things much faster.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
satisfies my impatience.
Well, how long were you at Wachovia and Wells Fargo for then? Because for not being structured, I think you're there.
Yeah, it was 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
15 years for not being very structured. That's a long time to be working for financial.
Had a great time. Yeah. Learned a great deal, and yeah.
So you've got this hourly billing model, which, interestingly enough, I've got somebody coming up in the next couple of months that has a kind of a similar billing model. So it seems like this solution is, it's becoming more and more popular. But I'd love to kind of understand how you kind of develop this model and why you believe it's more effective than some of the traditional models that are out there, like contingent retain models. Walk me through that.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm pretty biased. So let me just own that. And the bias started when I was a customer of traditional search. It always seemed like the fees and the incentives really were, there was always something there for me that just didn't make sense. And as I started getting into just an hourly recruitment research, name gen, lead development, and so forth, business, and realizing that we kept getting pulled further and further into the recruiting process, the hourly model made more sense to me, because when you pay 20-30% of first year's comp, you're buying, as a customer, you're buying some insurance. You're paying for the guarantee. If the person doesn't stay, that firm has to do that over again. Well, somebody's got to pay for that. And so the customer pays for it. Also, if you're incentivized by a large placement fee, there's always some temptation to maybe a little, embellish the opportunity a little bit more than you might normally, or to embellish the candidate to the client a little bit more. And if you don't get a quick hit in contingency, you move on to the next client. So the client who thinks you're working as diligently as you can may not know that you aren't. So when you pay by the hour, it's like an attorney or a law firm or a CPA or a consulting firm. You pay for them to focus just on you. And so economically speaking, when we don't have a loss, like we work a search in hopes that we get a fee and we don't get the fee, we don't have that. And so economically speaking, we end up being half or less than half of what a traditional firm charges. But it's, still really good margin for us. Now, most of the time we don't guarantee a hire. Under the hourly model, there's another not to exceed model where we do guarantee a hire, but we cap the fees well below what a traditional firm would charge. But in an hourly model like that, you can make as many hires as you want for the one-time investment. So that's the trade-off. We're not guaranteeing a hire, but you can have as many hires as you want under that one-time investment.
So with your team then, I mean, I just think of, and I talk about this a lot in the content that I post, and I've been vocal about it on other shows as well. From a cultural standpoint at your company, how much do you think that contributes to, better work-life balance, just kind of more stronger client relationships? Like how much of an impact does that have to your own, to the agencies in terms of, I just think of that contingent world where it's kind of like a boiler room, and you've got people who are really performing well, and then you have people that aren't necessarily and are feeling the heat, and then you have people who are new to the industry coming in. How is your culture different to that? And like, how does this model really help culturally speaking for your recruiters and your team?
We're a great place if you've got some level of recruiting experience. Most of our folks are 15, 20 years or more. But if you've got a blend of corporate and agency experience, that's really ideal for us, especially if you've had agency experience, because you know what you're not going to experience here, right? You're not running a full desk, and those split desks, those terms don't apply. You work as a team. We pursue people who are ostensibly not in the market. So when a corporate recruiter or head of talent acquisition realizes that they've got a shortage of, qualified candidates, and they've tried everything else before they go to a search firm, that's usually when they come to us. So the people that are here don't want the corporate life anymore. They don't want the agency life. They want something in between. And that's, when you can work as a team and you can work across multiple industries, multiple job functions, you're not typecast and, just doing accounting and finance or something like that all day, every day. So consequently, that means the people that come here, they're pretty smart folks. They can wrap their head around just about anything in very little time and be conversant with the client and the candidate. So now there are some exceptions where, like IT, for instance, you got to be really deep and immersed in that to be good at IT recruiting, for instance. And we still have, a number of people here that are very well versed in that, more so than I am. But that sort of makes up the culture. And we've been remote, virtual for 5 years now.
Love it.
So work-life balance is kind of preeminent for us. We just make it work for whatever the life need is. Yeah.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I know Jennifer just said this is a great model. And I think I told you before, I come from that very similar billing model, and but I came entry level in, and I think when I moved over to contingent, and I was only in contingent for less than a year, I think one of the things I noticed was, you mentioned something like having those conversations and being a consultant is really needed in an hourly model, and really understanding the business that you're working with, understanding the businesses you're working with. So one of the things you mentioned earlier that I'm curious about too is you said, before LinkedIn and before LinkedIn kind of became that primary measure for or primary way to source people, data was more of an issue. Now it's getting a hold of people. So walk me through, like, how has your model and kind of strategy in terms of just reaching people. How has that changed, and how are you out there reaching passive people? I mean, what are some of the things that you're doing which you think separates you from potentially traditional methods that people are using?
Well,
like, what are your secrets? That's what I'm asking right now.
And I'm going to give them to you. You're going to love this.
I do love it.
If you're a recruiter, you'll love this. So when you're not focused on a fee, it leaves some creative room in your mind to think, well, what am I doing this for? And if you fell in love with recruiting for some of the same reasons many of us did, which is what a cool role to play in someone's life, even for a brief moment in time, that has lifelong impact. So some years ago, I got focused on being, this term called purpose-driven recruitment. And the idea behind that is that when we engage with a candidate, and I'll tell you how we get to them in a minute, but when we engage with them, we're very intentional in the first few minutes to say, let me tell you one thing about our model that is important and why I believe it's important to you. We don't get paid any more, any less if you get hired. We get paid on an hourly basis for the service, which allows us to focus on what's most important to you. And you explain to, the logical stuff of, it's possible you'll retire doing what you're doing with the company you're with, but it's very unlikely. So change is imminent. Then the question is, are you going to drive that change at the right time, or is it going to happen to you? And so in a call like this, candidate, you're in a position of strength. I'm contacting you. So let's talk about what's important to you. And 9 times out of 10, when we contact someone, they're not walking around doing their job and thinking about what do I do if what am I going to say if a recruiter calls? So I realize I've caught you cold. Let me talk to you about some of the five main reasons that most of us, do what we do for a living. And let me hear from you as to which of those are most important, second most important, third most important, and then define them for me so I can tell you whether I believe that there's an alignment between what's important to you and the opportunity I called you about. So that, in a nutshell, that's purpose-driven recruitment. How you reach people in this time of, oh my gosh, the craziest market I've seen in 15 years.
Well, you just did an article too, I read on your LinkedIn page that said, I think it was a company LinkedIn page, said that it kind of listed the average amount of emails people use, and it was like the open rate was like 14%. Just to give some context in there.
Yeah. And so email and phone calls and all that, I mean, there's so much traffic in this job market. And then when you add robocalls and junk email and all that, you're trying to thread a needle. Yeah. And so how do you get in touch with people? Persistence. So email, in-mail, text, phone call, voicemail. And in some cases, we'll send a 1-page, no logo sheet of paper that just says, I've been trying to make contact with you. I'm keeping this letter intentionally discreet. Please check your email for my contact information and just put your name at the bottom. And that goes FedEx, personal and confidential. That way, if someone else opens it and hands it to them, it's not going to be a little awkward. But that will get somebody to respond. So when I'm delivering training, as I've done for many years, to corporate recruiters, they get very uneasy when I say we will leave 10, 12, 15, 20 voicemails until we reach somebody. And, that you can just see the anxiety come across them until you model the voicemail that you're leaving at message number 3 or 4 or 5 is, hey, Joel, it's Marc Hutto again. I know I've left you several messages. Hey, from your background, certainly with Hoxo Media, and, and I start walking through your background further, we really like to talk to you. And our client, if this is true, if our client asked if we'd made contact with you yet, and shared with them that we're working on it very persistently. And Joel, please know that we endeavor to be polite, professional, but also persistent. So if I don't hear from you today, I guess I'll speak with you or your voicemail again tomorrow. And you got to do that every day. And that you can't do that for everybody you're chasing. That's why you have to prioritize your top 10, 20 candidates. They get that every day.
Yeah.
And in 15 years, we've had 4 complaints for using that approach. 4. Every week we get 1 or more unsolicited compliments for that level of persistence.
Well, I mean, when I think about anything in terms of outbound nowadays, I think one of my friends said it well, like it's being like persistent and like polite almost with that persistence, and being patient, allowing and understanding that, it really does take multiple reach outs. I think you've got to be more omni-channel nowadays. You've got to consider the fact that people, some people will respond to cold calls, some people won't. So you've really got to diversify the way that you're reaching out. But I think that being persistent and being polite, and I love that approach of even adding some humor into it. I think that's massive. When you're having that conversation with people and you mention you're not getting a fee for placing them, what's typically the reaction from a candidate when you bring that up? And I know that's I'm sure it's strategic that you do bring that up in a call. So what do you find the reaction is from candidates when you bring that up that early in a conversation?
Similar to the comment you got just a minute ago from, I think it was Jennifer. Why doesn't everybody do it this way?
Yeah, let's see.
We hear that a lot. That makes sense. Why doesn't everybody do it this way? So it's you want to differentiate and be memorable in any and every way you can, and that's one of them. There's other things you can do, like I love this little company, DigiMe. They do video job descriptions. They do a really good job with that. So that's something we'll sometimes include in our outreach to be memorable and differentiated. But to your question, we get a very positive, almost a head scratching, sort of that, that you can just hear them pondering it a little bit and usually commenting on it.
Yeah. And I guess then does that play pretty well into your business development then, in terms of, people thinking, wow, that's a different model? Is it pretty easy then to, not easy, but does that open the door up to potential business opportunities as well with new clients?
I'll tell you, to be honest, very plain spoken about this. We're not the right firm if you just want to keep it simple and transactional. Not to say that it's complicated, but if you just want to, I don't want to pay anybody until I hire someone, then there's firms that will serve you in that way. That's fine. But if you believe, as we do, that hiring and being hired is a big deal, it changes lives, especially the person doing the hiring, most certainly the person being hired, but especially in a small company or on a team, you feel it. You feel that the impact of that hire. And so if you want to be strategic about it, because we don't just go to some database, we go where people work. We go straight to where they're employed. And, it almost always begins and ends with a list of target companies. So who's known for doing it, whatever it is, extremely well? Who does the client admire in terms of that company? So we go after 30 to 50 people. We'll identify. We'll connect with 55% of those on average. Would be higher, except we're kind of in the home stretch of the search by the time they've got 3, 6, 8 candidates they're considering, and there's no need to keep calling the others. So that's from the candidate's perspective. Also, it's a differentiator for them.
And like I said, I've talked to a number of companies recently too, which have adopted this method of billing. And I think you brought it up, like, why wouldn't any company like jump for this? Especially right now in the market we're in, where if you're not dedicating time to a search, it's going to be extremely difficult. Do you see models like this replacing contingent, or I guess do you see contingent being around over the next 5 to 10 years, given data automation, given different models popping up? Do you see contingent still being relevant? And if so, are there particular markets that, contingent would work better for than, potentially the hourly billing model, if that makes sense?
I don't think contingency or retain's going anywhere. I don't see this eclipsing those because they're so well established. If you've got a very specialized need and you want to do a quick check with a traditional firm, they got on the plus side, they've got people they can show you almost instantly. On the not so plus side, I worry that some of those folks get a number of opportunities presented to them regularly, and they've been recruited and placed by that company in the past, and they'll go after them again. Whether that client was a company was a client 3 or 4 years ago when they hired that person, they'll still go after them again. So on the plus side, you're going to get a short list pretty quickly. On the downside, it's the best of their database. It's the best people they got in their database who they think they can place faster. And, sidebar, if you've negotiated that rate down to 20% or 18%, all you've really done was assured yourself you're going to see the B and C players that firm knows, because they're going to take their highest, probable candidates and go to the 25% or more firm client that's paying. So there's a time for that. The best of our database is the best in the world, right? So if there are 20 companies that are really good at whatever it is, we're going to go find people in those 20 companies that are doing it and then give you the best of those. It's not limited to a database.
Are you using any, personality or kind of cultural assessments or anything like that? Is that something that's included in your process?
Some of our clients like to use what they are accustomed to using. There's one that uses like Watson Glaser for critical thinking, and then there's others out there. But it's interesting you'd raise that, because there's a company called Crystal Knows. Have you heard of them, Joel?
I have not heard of them.
And KNOWS.
No.
Get ready to have your mind blown when you go play with this. Go to their website after the broadcast and check them out. But a brilliant company that what they've done is you have a Google Chrome plugin that if I pull up your profile on LinkedIn, and there's a little button on the side that says view personality, and it reads the language you chose to write your LinkedIn profile and renders its best estimate as to what your DISC operating style is. And those DISC reports, when they're traditionally done, they're like 50, 60 pages. Who's ever read one of those cover to cover? I've never met anybody that. I'll never do it. But these are really light and right to the point. And they're scary accurate. So there are ways to use that in the process. We typically say to the hiring manager, why don't you review yours and tell me what you agree with and what you disagree with? I'll give that to each candidate who's a finalist, and I'll ask them to agree or disagree to the data on their report. And when the two of you get together, you'll have a copy of each other's. And the advice here, candidate, client, is that you have a substantive conversation about operating styles before you make a multi-year commitment to work together. You're going to get to know these things about each other. The things that you'll see in that report, you will learn them over years. Why not accelerate that process? And then once someone's at reveal for a month or two, we'll pull that back out and I'll say, would you look at your report one more time? Tell me if there's anything on there that we're not paying attention to that you want us to pay attention to. It might be something like thrives in a role that has the following as a responsibility. And she or he might say, yeah, I'm really strong in that area, but you're not tapping me for it. So it's a really good tool for assessing and assimilation, onboarding, integration to the culture, and to make sure that person is feeling understood.
Well, Alan says Crystal knows is indeed scary accurate. 100% agree with that.
Awesome.
And then Jennifer just said she uses the DISC and Strength Finders, which I think, DISC and Strength Finder are really, really popular as well. I'm curious to as well, like, what are some of the things right now? Obviously, the market is insane. Every recruitment company I'm talking to is hiring recruiters. Every company I see out there is hiring internal recruiters. Everybody's hiring. What are some of the critical mistakes that you're seeing right now? And what are some of the things that you're advising your clients like, hey, we've got to make our process quicker. We've got to follow up people. Like what are some of the big things you're seeing right now that people are really dropping the ball on?
It's kind of a little broad. Let me make sure if I'm not responding to it the way you'd intended, or if I'm missing your question, let me know. But what I see happening right now is just one of the craziest markets I've ever seen. And so, I mean, you got Amazon putting a package together that says as a driver, you can earn $300,000. Now that's probably a lottery ticket, sort of a schedule that you got to really work your butt off to get that. Taco Bell's paying $1,000 for a signing bonus for cashiers. This leader who we just hired is coming from healthcare. And she said, it's crazy. I'm seeing our competitors pay $30,000 signing bonuses to nurses. I just talked with a client this morning who said, you told me that this HR specialist that I wanted to hire that you presented was going to be at X amount. And now you're telling me she's at Y. What happened? Like somebody else made her an offer and drove the price up on you. So people are so, and I'm one of them, you're kind of desperate. I mean, we can't find recruiters fast enough. I should say before last week, we're very fortunate now to be in conversation with 5 people. But it is a very, I don't want to say competitive because it's just so bland. You got to do some crazy things if you want to bring people on. I recently, here's an example. Do you know the site Cameo?
Yeah.
Have you seen this? It's got all these actors and actresses and sports figures and all that kind of stuff and celebrities and reality TV. I've hired Mark McGrath of Sugar Ray to send a follow-up video message to a candidate or two that I really wanted.
I love that.
And there's others out there that'll do that, and some really well-known people that are very current and active today. They generally do it for charity's sake, but just anything you can think of to be memorable and just differentiated, and to express that I'm serious. We really want you to come on board.
Yeah. What about are you seeing, like, obviously your company's remote? Is remote now? I mean, from what I read, at least, if you're not hiring people remotely, you're losing out on people. Are you seeing that across the board? Obviously, there's certain industries like healthcare where that's not going to apply. But if the job can be done remotely, are you encouraging people like, hey, you've got to at least offer flexibility for that? You're losing people because people aren't offering those types of flexibilities?
Without a doubt. Yep. If it can be done remotely, and it's maybe an obvious statement, but a lot of people are moving because their employer said, sorry, the remote thing is over. Come on back in. And they're saying, I'm pretty accustomed to it now. I'm going to stay home and find another place to work. So, it's almost table stakes these days. I mean, start talking to me about remote before you try to compel me on relo or coming into the office. So relo was hard before 2020. Now it's extremely difficult. People just don't want to pick up and move, generally speaking. But yeah, the remote piece is it was a competitive advantage. Now it's an expectation if it can be done.
Well, I'm reading about this, like, Great Resignation. That's, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the LinkedIn articles where it's like 40%. It's some crazy number, like 40% of the workforce is looking to quit and, either pursue like a side hustle, or they're looking to, leave their employers that they were with for the last year and a half because of COVID, and kind of feeling that they had to kind of stick with the company they're at because of the job market. We're going to see a big Great Resignation. What are your thoughts on, like, how to retain people as you're hiring them now? Because my natural thought is, if people are leaving, like, are we going to see like just shorter and shorter career stints at different places? And with the remote work being more and more available, are companies going to really struggle to retain people? Do you think?
Well, are they going to struggle? I think we're seeing a temporal thing right now on retention, right? Some people have watched their company do an incredible job of behaving and operating in a way that's admirable, and they've just created more loyalty. And then you got the opposite where it's like, man, as soon as this thing is over, I'm out of here because you have showed me, the worst side of what this company is about. And then you add the reload or remote thing in there on top of that. That's also a little bit of a disruptor. And this pent up hiring demand that has everybody's price tag going up, so it's a very tumultuous market right now. One great way that I've found to be pretty intentional about keeping people is you got to re-recruit them periodically. And so remember I talked about these 5 things that are important to everybody just a minute ago. We call those career drivers.
Yeah.
And a number of years ago, I got to pondering this and thought, is there an infinite list of reasons that we stay where we are or we go to the next opportunity? Probably not. So long story short, I put it down to 5 categories: compensation and benefits, the meaning or the impact of the work, the environment. That's the big one. That's like people and the culture and work-life balance and diversity and so forth, company reputation, so on. 4th is personal and professional development. And 5th is the leadership or management that surrounds you. And so that's important to most people who work for a paycheck, but the order and weighting of those is different for each person, and how they're defined is different for each person. So we take all of that, we take those 5 categories and all the little sub bullets under each one of those career drivers and convert it into a re-recruiting you to reveal. And we do it about once a year. And we just say on the topic of, work-life balance, is it unimportant, important, or very important? And how are we doing? Couldn't get much better. Is the top end. The second one is doing great. And the lowest ranking is we need to talk. And so what we do is ask each of our colleagues to just contemplate, what's most important to them, how they define it, and then how are we doing on those things that are important to you. So when another recruiter calls one of our recruiters, for instance, they're already conscious of, I got it. I'm pretty good. I'm thinking about this stuff, and I'm compelled to think about it by my employer. And, certainly if we find that we're not doing well on something, we'll do whatever we can to make it better. So that's a, very hands-on way of ensuring that you're not at risk of losing someone, because you're asking them to think about it and to tell you how you're doing. And they're in effect saying, I've got it pretty good here, or I don't.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And I think this is it Netflix? Like that was that like their like the CEO was basically telling people to go out and like re-interview different places to like see how much they're worth, and or something like that.
That's great. I love that story.
It was like going out and just like to know, like, number one, to like get your interview skills, keep them fresh, but then also like, hey, if you got offered $20,000 more, I think maybe they would even like at times like match the salary. I think so. I think it was Netflix. And Adam, I just want to shout out Adam here. He is here. He's actually the guy I mentioned earlier that said be persistent and patient and like just, stay in there. So big shout out to him. I want to touch on something because I think this is kind of right in line. It's a slight subject change, but I know you have the Reveal talent community. So walk us through that and like how you use that and how you're building this community and like where the vision for the community came from, and even just give us a background on what the Reveal talent community is all about as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. So for 20 years, I've been doing pro bono career coaching, friends, family, total strangers, groups. Been to outplacement, career transition firms over the years, church groups, etc. Anyone that wants some free advice, and
which is basically everybody on LinkedIn, by the way.
Everybody on LinkedIn. Yeah. And so on the revealtalent.com, there's a free course that basically is these 5 modules that we just took the advice that I've been giving and put it into a course and kept it free. And that alone give you a lot of traction on finding a job or managing your career. So the big question, Joel, is if you ask someone who is more than likely at a professional level, salaried level, how important is it for you to proactively manage your career? Do you think you should do that or let the winds blow you where they may? Obviously, the answer to the question is the former, not the latter. Yes, it's important to do that. But when you ask them, well, what's the first step? What's in that box? It's really hard for people to summon that up. And that's no big surprise. But if there are tools and resources to lay out where you're going to go in your career and to literally see all the different places you could go. If I move from this role to this one or this one or this one, it can lead me to that one. We help that's called a career trajectory analysis. We're able to do that for people. So that's what that's about. It's about proactive career management. And we appeal to starters, people right out of school, seekers. Those are people who are unemployed, need employment, or they're proactively managing their career. And then transitioners, people who are ready to move into a different career field and want to maximize their income, but they don't want to go deeper into that field. Now here's the part, right? This is the big crescendo in this story. I don't like taking money from people who need a job. I've never been supportive of that. And I had to get past that if we were going to open this line of business. And I met a guy named Marc Hutto late last year who's a career coach, certified in 2 different organizations, spent 26 years at Verizon, got laid off due to a restructuring, was invited to come back into a different role. I said, nope, I'm going to go follow my passion and do career coaching. He was doing that for a little over a year when we met. And he and I both had this struggle about taking money from people who actually need a job. And so part of what we'll do is help the person build a career portfolio, heads and tails beyond a resume, and make introductions to the companies they have chosen they want to work for. So when that company says, yeah, we'll hire them, we'd like to hire them, it's voluntary. It's not contractual. Pay us a landing fee. Let me give you round numbers just as an example. $3,000 landing fee. Let's say the person, our client in the community, spent $1,000 with us. We'll take that $3,000, we'll fully reimburse them the $1,000, and then we'll take $500 and put it into a scholarship fund for people who don't have the first penny to even invest in the possibility of getting paid back. So that's good karma for us. It's good karma for that employer. Like if you don't pay that landing fee, we're probably not going to bring other people to you, and bad karma to you. But it's not an exorbitant landing fee, and it just makes sense, in terms of doing the right thing. So that's the model.
Well, that's massive, and I think to your point, I mean, there's a lot of there's obviously a lot of coaches, a lot of career coaches, and I think one of the things that I'm passionate about a lot in the content I'm putting out is really finding the right coaches, because it's one thing. It's one thing to call yourself a coach. It's another to be a coach. It's another to actually have the reputation, the experience to get people opportunities. And so I love that. But at the end of the day, too, I can understand why you would feel like that. But I'm also a big proponent in investing in yourself as well. And I think being able to invest in yourself, particularly with something like career, the dividends on that are massive as well. But if you can find a way to make that system better to where the company's saving money and you're able to reimburse the job seekers, that's massive. So where can people, if they're interested in this, where can they find information? It's just, you have a website and online.
Revealtalent.com. Yep. Revealtalent.com, and should be pretty intuitive. The free course is there. It's called Owning Your Career. That's a great place to start. Book some time with Marc Hutto and look at other options for resources. There's so many things out there now that are just crazy, like a crowd voting thing about you can put your photo up, A or B, and ask people. Yeah. It's called Photo Feeler. Yeah. So what are you projecting with this photo versus this photo? And there's just so many things out there that will help you refine your position in the market so that you can, command the more opportunities and more income, more than likely.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, there's little things like LinkedIn profile and making sure your LinkedIn profile is good. You've got keywords. I mean, there really is a lot, but I think especially with like new grads, when I was graduating college, there was no real help outside of, hey, here's our portal where companies are posting potential jobs that are open. But there wasn't a coaching on, this is how you network, this is how you connect with people, this is how you think of your career. Like, I thought I was gonna graduate and 2 years later I was gonna be CEO of a company because my education was so good. But the reality is it's a marathon. Your career is a marathon. So I think if you're able to have those goals and a strategy, it's massive. So and then your company as well, it sounds like you've got some candidates as well that you're talking to, but are you openly hiring recruiters as well? Where can people find out about those opportunities?
Yeah, revealglobal.com. You'll see them there. You'll see them probably on Indeed and LinkedIn. I think they're still up there, but we just hired 3 recruiters. We need 3 to 4 more. We've got a new practice leader starting at the end of the month. And sales development rep that I'm hiring for now as well. So trying to keep up. It's we're the restaurant with the line out the door, and we're trying to put up more tables as quickly as we can to accommodate.
I love it. And primarily going for somebody who's got experience. Location, they're good to be anywhere. I mean, you're open to remote. Yeah.
Anywhere.
Right.
We had an office in England for a number of years. And we were not even virtual at that time, but talent is wherever you find it. So, yeah, it doesn't matter where you're located.
Awesome. Well, if you're looking and you're ex-agency or you've been at an agency, you've got some corporate experience as well, definitely check out Reveal and what they're doing as well. And I think I've worked with that business model before as well, and I can attest it is really a great experience, and it's great to be able to. I feel like it is the model where you're truly able to treat kind of this candidates like humans, which I'm not saying contingent isn't like that. There's plenty of good contingent recruiters, but it definitely takes the edge of like just the hustle of just trying to fill roles to get commission. So I'm with you 100% there. Mark, I would love to. I'd love to end with a question that I ask all of my guests, and this is just kind of going back to, and just to give you a little background. The heart behind this question was at the beginning of the pandemic, which I know is things are clearing up, but I think it applies to now because I think it's actually probably a hard time to be in recruitment in terms of finding candidates. What advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out in the recruitment world that, maybe is just having a tough time, or that they're not feeling like, is this right for me? Or they're questioning, is this right for me? What advice would you give to somebody in that position? And what would you say to them if you could just have a one-on-one with them?
I'd go back to career drivers. I mean, that's universal. So what's important to you before, it's like, don't go to the grocery store hungry because you might buy something you didn't really want. So be really clear on what's important to you and document it and make sure the opportunity aligns to what's important to you before you had anyone influencing you to say, this would be a great job for you, especially a recruiter telling you that. Beyond that, decide if you want, if you're money driven, money motivated, that's great. Go contingency, go retain. That we're not the kind that high fives over fees and who earned the most last week or last month. We're more about literally we celebrate hires as life-changing events. So, there's the agency world, there's the staffing world, which is a little more high volume models like ours, and then corporate recruiting. You can learn a lot in corporate recruiting. I'm a big, advocate for that. But that is more about matching and, making sure you're working through applicants properly. But most corporate recruiters, having been one, will tell you there's very little recruiting, like go out and find people. You just don't have the capacity to do it. I mean, there's most companies, it's recruiters, it's all they can do to keep up with the applicants. So just know what you're getting into. The other advice I'd give to anyone thinking about recruiting is if you think you're going in the corporate direction or agency or whatever, find somebody who's already in that environment. Maybe they went to the same school as you did. You can find them on LinkedIn that way. Yep. And say, hey, one alum to another, can I bend your ear? I'd love to get some advice from you. If you share a past employer in common or something like that, that's a great way to get the inside track, because if you just touch them cold, that's fine. But if you have the same alma mater or the same hometown or something like that, anything that you have in common, they're more likely to say, let me give you some advice. Let me tell you what it's really like here. But don't just go with one conversation. Have a lot of those conversations. I did the same thing before I opened a business. Like, what's it like to do this? What's your life like every day? So get on the other side of that wall and peek in.
I love that. I love that. Mentorship. It's huge. And I mean, to be honest, that's what I think is missing a lot of times in a lot of agencies, is really that true mentorship. And, possibly because things aren't incentivized that way. And it's all about, basically maximizing your time for profit. So I love that advice. Well, Mark, I appreciate your time. I know, you've got a lot going on. You've got a lot of really, really cool things going on. Guys, if you can, definitely connect with Mark on LinkedIn, follow him, follow his content. And, if you are in the market and you're looking for something new, apply for one of those roles as well. I think it's a great business model, and I'm sure over the next year or so, Mark's going to experience a lot of growth as well. So I appreciate everybody who's out there. Jennifer, love your engagement and comments. Really appreciate that. Adam, thanks for stopping by. John as well. And then anyone else who is listening to this afterwards, I'm going to drop the links to the Reveal Talent community as well. I'll drop those links on the episode. I appreciate you guys. Special thanks to Hoxo and Volcanic as well, our latest sponsor. And we will be with you guys next week for another guest. And we'll have those announcements coming up later this week. But Mark, once again, thanks so much. And I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.